Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hey friends, I just wanted to pop in and talk a little bit about MBOM behind the scenes. When I entered the yoga world as a teacher, I was surprised by how many yoga teachers were struggling with the business side of yoga. And that's why I created MBOM. MBOM helps yoga teachers and studio owners become entrepreneurs. It helps you to go from surviving to thriving with your yoga business. I am on a mission to change the yoga industry, to teach yoga teachers and studio owners about the business of yoga, and to help you feel more confident, successful, and abundant. After releasing hundreds of podcast episodes, I want to create content that dives deeper into helping yoga entrepreneurs thrive and elevate their businesses. This is where MBOM Behind the Scenes comes in. Each week, you will get bonus content from the weekly guest or myself, diving deeper into how you can take the teachings and apply them to your business. This podcast is designed for yoga teachers and studio owners who are ready to take it to the next level. If you enjoy MBOM and have been looking for an affordable way to learn more, this is it. For the cost of 2 lattes per month, you will get never-before-heard content that you can't access anywhere else that will give you tangible ways to dive deeper into your yoga business. If this sounds like something you're interested in, let's dive in. Head on over to patreon.com/MBOM yoga and sign up to get behind the scenes now. Once again, that's patreon.com/MBOM yoga to get all the exclusive behind the scenes content. I'll see you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the MBOM podcast. I am so excited that you are joining me for today's episode of the show. This episode of the podcast is brought to you in part by OfferingTree. OfferingTree is your one-stop shop for all things website, scheduling software, payment software, email newsletter software, membership software, and now online store software. They cover everything with one payment plan, one password, if you can believe it. You're going to hear more about OfferingTree a little bit later on in this episode, so stay tuned for that. And today on the podcast, I am very excited to welcome Alex K and Alex J to the podcast. We have a entrepreneurial couple, Alex and Alex here. They are the founders of YogaTrail and also the founders of Ubindi. And today on the podcast, we are diving into their backgrounds with creating YogaTrail, what they learned through that, a little bit about their career and how they got to where they are now, creating this brand new software for yoga teachers. We're talking a little bit about how the pandemic has impacted what they're doing, how they were able to pivot, and then diving into online yoga, because the world that we're living in right now is that most of us yoga teachers, most of us studio owners are teaching online at the moment. And we're talking about opportunities in this new world, pros and cons to teaching online yoga, tips for doing online yoga really well, and so much more. And Alex and Alex have been in this world of software and technology for a long, long time with their backgrounds in YogaTrail, as well as with their creation of Ubindi. So they have tons to share about this new world that we're living in. So I hope that you enjoy this episode of the show. And without further ado, here they are. Alex and Alex, welcome to the podcast today. I'm super excited to have you both with me today.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for having us.
We're probably more excited than you are, but okay.
No, I'm really excited to chat with you both. And I want to start with just, can each of you introduce yourself since you have the same name? Let's just differentiate so people know who is who here.
I'm Alex K. We have different last names. We're married, and so to be able to get individual mails and things, we kept our last names. I'm the boy of the team. And I don't know what to say. I'm an entrepreneur, formerly a physicist, but for the last 12 years, I would say I'm an internet entrepreneur. co-founder of a thing called YogaTrail that probably some listeners will have heard about, and a new product or project called Ubindi.
And I'm Alex Jaton. I'm the co-founder of Ubindi. Well, before doing Ubindi and YogaTrail, I was in the publishing industry for many years and teaching languages and other things like that.
Amazing. Great. Thank you for that to both of you. And I'm really curious, this has nothing to do with yoga, but what is it like to be married to somebody with the same name as you?
Well, sometimes people think you're talking about yourself in the third person. So but I think it's more confusing for other people than for us because we always know who we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if I say Alex, I'm talking to her. And if I hear my name, then she's talking to me. And it's very easy. It's more confusing for the outsider.
Yeah, people give us nicknames sometimes to make it easy.
I love it. That's amazing. I was just thinking about how funny it would be if my husband's name was Amanda as well, but thankfully it's not, so I don't have to worry about that. So I'm so curious to dive into everything having to do with YogaTrail and Ubindi, and you guys have done a ton of amazing work in the yoga space. And I'm curious if you can kind of walk me through how you guys became co-founders of YogaTrail.
That happened quite a while ago in 2011. And we were living in Chiang Mai, and Alex was teaching science at the university there. And he was sitting on a course that was like internet entrepreneurship course. And as part of the course, you had to kind of come up with an idea and a project and present it in front of a type of dragon's den of local entrepreneurs, if you want. So then he just asked me, well, what could I present? And I came up with the idea of YogaTrail, like a yoga portal,
you
yoga
were like
finder.
Just into yoga. You were crazy about
yoga.
yoga.
I was taking a lot of yoga classes at the time. So that's how everything kind of went to the yoga space. And then he presented that kind of pitched the idea of YogaTrail in front of this panel of entrepreneurs. And one of them had a web development agency, and he said, that sounds like a cool idea, let's talk about that. And then it went from there, and we founded YogaTrail and started working on it.
This was in Chiang Mai, Thailand. So we were in Thailand basically throughout YogaTrail. I mean, YogaTrail is still going. We're not in Thailand anymore, but we were there 7 years. We did the Silicon Valley 500 Startups Accelerator, raised money from investors. We did the whole kind of startup-y thing with YogaTrail. All from Thailand. It was quite interesting. But it just sort of happened by chance is the short story.
Yeah. So you just kind of had this idea and then saw an opportunity and dove in and built something that is amazing.
Well, yeah, back then it was really hard to find yoga. You basically would go to Google, and then whichever yoga studio was doing the best SEO job at the time would come up. And there wasn't really something for people who are more discerning about like yoga. There's so many different styles and flavors of yoga. So we thought kind of a portal where people could find certain kinds of yoga classes and teachers and studios and retreats and anything to do with yoga.
Yeah, and all the information that they might need to choose a studio or to go to a certain class or to contact a certain teacher. Because in 2011, it wasn't the internet wasn't so Google dominated. So there was like all the Google Maps and Google search results and stuff. It wasn't all there yet. Maybe that's something that people don't remember. but then that's where we thought YogaTrail would be useful for people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's sort of a strange experience to think back to a time that you lived through that. So it's similar, but it's not the same, right? Like I think about in 2011, I graduated university, and then my now husband and I backpacked for 6 months around the world. And I didn't even take a cell phone with me. Like he had an iPod Touch and I had an iPad. Like we had basically no way of getting a hold of us other than email or Facebook. And we just like used Wi-Fi at the hostels and stuff like that. And we used like paper maps, which is so funny to think about now.
Right.
And it's like not that long ago, right? Like it's only like 9 years ago yet.
And just a few years before that, there was no Facebook. In 2009, when did the iPhone come out? Smartphones weren't a thing 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah, I think we're all showing our ages here.
It's not bad. Things are changing rapidly. And now 2020 with this COVID situation, we've sort of been pushed into a whole new tech evolution. You have a lot of people who barely were able to use email at the beginning of the year, senior citizens and people who are just not all connected all the time. Well, they've all been forced to basically, be really techie. Everybody has Zoom on their computer now.
Like my parents have a Zoom account now.
Yeah.
They could barely turn on the computer before.
Yeah. I went into just the bank that I bank at here in Canada. A couple of months ago, I had to get a bank draft, which is something you actually can't do online because I've done everything pretty much online for years and years. And, they have all their policies and stuff because of COVID. And I was asking the lady as she was writing my bank draft, like how things have been. And she said the thing that's been most interesting is that they've spent, like a lot of the bank tellers have spent a lot of their time educating people on how to online bank. Like people who previously, it was just in their habits, like once a week they go to the bank and they do their banking with a teller, were forced to do it online during the pandemic. And so they had to learn all of this. And I was thinking about how it's interesting to think about that shift happening in numerous industries, including the yoga industry. I think most yoga teachers, flipped their businesses in, a couple of days. It's pretty wild to think about.
It's a profound change in the yoga market. From what we can see, and it's not temporary. This is it's quite a disruption.
Well, in our way, we flipped our business as well.
How do you mean?
With Ubindi, because we started building Ubindi for in-person classes and places and venues and, just the yoga world as we had it before.
Yeah.
And when the pandemic hit, suddenly we're like, everything's happening online. So we have to accommodate for that too. And that forced us, and I think it forced a lot of people to take a big step into the unknown and discover what can happen when you teach online and when you do your businesses in a different way.
Yeah, that brings me to my next question, which I'm really curious about how the pandemic has impacted what you guys have been doing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So for our new project, Ubindi, it's software for teachers, kind of like Mind Body Online, but super light and ridiculously cheap. Like it's free for teachers who have 50 students or less, and then only $10 a month for a full unlimited thing. It's been kind of good. So because teachers are scrambling to figure out how they're going to, teach on Zoom and do things differently, they're looking for new tools. So I'm almost ashamed to say it. It's been kind of good for us because people are finding Ubindi. Obviously, we're not happy about anyone getting sick or businesses being forced to close or downsize or just general malaise. But it's been kind of a good time to launch Ubindi for us personally.
For YogaTrail, on the other hand, it's been tough.
It's been devastation.
Because we see that at least half of the yoga studios that were listed on YogaTrail and that were part of the portal exist, they're permanently closed now.
Yeah, it's around half of all yoga studios from what we can see from YogaTrail. And, YogaTrail has a lot of studios and teachers all around the world, probably close to 100,000. I think half of them are gone.
Wow.
It sounds horrible, but that's what it's looking like.
And so with YogaTrail, there's been people who are removing their listings because they're either no longer teaching or their studios are closing, but there's been lots of teachers using Ubindi.
I wouldn't say lots of teachers on Ubindi. We've just launched a few months ago, so we have like 600 or 700 now teachers using it. But yeah, on YogaTrail, every day people are saying, I'm out of business, take my listing down.
Yeah, it's a tough time for sure. And I'm curious, just from what you're seeing between, the different shifts between YogaTrail and Ubindi, what do you kind of feel like the future of the yoga industry looks like?
I'll answer that, I guess. It was tough before 2020 for yoga studios because of huge amounts of competition. They have a lot of overhead. There's a yoga studio on every block in some cities, and it was tough to earn a profit and stay in business before now. Now, with basically social distancing rules still being in place in most places, there's no way that a yoga studio can really make a profit. And the problem is and will be that after lockdowns are over and COVID's forgotten, so many people are liking this online stuff. They like the convenience. The students like the convenience of not having to go somewhere. A lot of them are a little bit shy about being in a room full of other people. So the whole thing is going to stick around. And with people teaching online, it's going to sound horrible, but it's difficult to think of a real reason for a yoga studio to exist. Before, they were providing a great venue, community experience with people connecting, feedback and encouragement from a teacher right in front of you, nice hardwood floors and some showers. But with the online thing, well, it's hard to imagine.
Yeah, it's tougher. Maybe the studios are going to have to kind of reinvent themselves in a way, or really adapt what they're offering to the teachers and to the people who come to classes, or to the people that might want to take classes on an online studio. On the other hand, what we see is that there's a huge opportunity for teachers, though. And before, it was tough for them to get jobs in yoga studios because there was so much competition for teaching slots, and they had to accept maybe fees that were not ideal for them, let's say. And now they can run their own businesses from home, basically. They can reach out to students that can be anywhere in the world to come and take a class with them, and just be really like an empowered entrepreneur.
Yeah, so we see big silver lining on these clouds, which is for yoga teachers. This is a big opportunity to do their own thing, because everyone is now comfortable with taking classes online. It's relatively easy for them. They don't have to invest in expensive equipment or anything, right? You just have a computer and you can teach a pretty good class from your living room or your bedroom. And you can connect with people that aren't just in your immediate area. You can use social media or other marketing channels and build a personal brand. And potentially, and a lot of people are doing this already, do better in terms of business than you could have before in the studio model.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I've thought about this a lot because I work with yoga teachers and I work with yoga studios. So I work with yoga teachers primarily through like one-on-one coaching and that type of thing. And then I've got 2 primary studios that I work with doing management and digital marketing. And so it's been interesting kind of seeing the shifts that are taking place both for yoga teachers and for yoga studios. And everything you're saying with regards to studios is definitely something that I think both the studios I work with are feeling. You know, the cost of overhead is massive for studios, you know, the cost of rent, the cost of utilities, and then the cost of paying teachers, of course. And then looking at, okay, there's like the demand for these classes, you know, as fall hits, especially here in Canada and in the US, you know, these classes are starting to fill more, especially with the more popular teachers. But we're limited based on regulations in our areas, which are, you know, the 2 meters or 6 feet distancing, which makes it really tough. And then, you know, for both studios, the classes are being live streamed and most of them are in person, which allows more people to come to class, which makes them a little bit more viable. And so I've been thinking about, you know, how do we have studios that want to continue to be, you know, viable, successful, available for students, but then also thinking about what you're talking about with teachers. And something I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on, because I sort of get this vibe that studios are shifting, but I don't think that they're completely obsolete at this point, because there are a lot of teachers that don't really want to run their own businesses. Are you guys kind of seeing that too, or what are your thoughts on that?
For sure. It's always been the case that teachers in the yoga world are less business-minded than teachers of other things. You know, yoga is more spiritual and about giving, and a lot of teachers kind of
teach because they love teaching.
Well, for sure, they teach because they love teaching, but they almost feel guilty when they ask for money and stuff like that. So for sure, I think that a lot of teachers are going to become entrepreneurs because they'll have to. And I think they're realizing that it doesn't mean that you are evil or somehow, I don't know, a capitalist pig or something when you just try to figure out how you're going to eat, and pay rent and support maybe a family. For sure. But it's totally true that one value the studios have traditionally brought and will continue to bring is just the marketing and the organizing and the admin and the things that are not directly yoga teaching, but sort of business aspects.
All the slightly more unpleasant bits of running a business.
Right.
The harder parts, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's if you and I think many teachers do this very well. I've interviewed many successful yoga teachers. I've seen lots of successful yoga teachers running their own businesses, which is amazing. But there's also people who are like, oh, I want to run this workshop. What do I need to do? Okay, it's not just planning your content. You need to, create some advertising for it. You need to market it. You need to tell people about it. You need to make sure that there's like a clear, easy way for people to pay you and stuff like that. And a lot of times teachers are like, I'll just find a studio to do this through. So I think there's that aspect of it that I've thought about. And the other thing too is one of the studios I work with, we've been doing market research with our current and lapsed clients. And it's been really interesting to kind of hear what they have to say. So these are students, not teachers. And one of the things that's continually come up is this idea of community. And I was chatting with my husband about this in the idea of like, can a single teacher create that community experience that a studio can? And I think the answer is not like simply just yes or no. I think it more lands in the like, some teachers probably can do it and build that following. But one thing that I love about the studio model is that you can come, you can be in a community, and you can even do that online, of course, via Zoom. But you pay one membership fee and you get a lot of options for different classes and different teachers, which I think is something that I guess is like maybe a slight challenge for yoga teachers. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, there's different kinds of yoga teachers, and there are certainly different kinds of yoga practitioners. Some people will only take a class from their teacher, right? Their guru, and no one else. And some people are happy to jump into different kinds of yoga styles and experience different teachers. It all depends. It may be the case that studios will become more of an association of teachers, and perhaps not even have an address with big rooms where people can take yoga classes, but rather just be a person or a few people who can organize and sort of consolidate a group of teachers, and then perhaps have virtual studios that are basically, you pay a membership and there may be 10 teachers teaching different classes that are part of this virtual studio. That sort of thing could certainly go in that direction.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Kind of like almost like the idea of coming back to probably where yoga studios originated, like teachers coming together, like, hey, you teach this style, I teach this style, let's rent a space together. And in this case, we can take out the space rental, coming together, creating a schedule, setting up, Zoom, which is very, very low financial burden, or, using something like Ubindi and being able to kind of offer a couple different styles via one membership package in a way that's a bit simpler than the yoga studio, I guess, model traditionally has been.
Much simpler, but the whole financial picture is now totally different. Before, on average in the US and throughout most of the world, 80% of the revenue coming into yoga classes was going to the studio because they had to pay rent and many other things. And 20% was going to the teachers. But if you're just really organizing some stuff online, it's going to be hard to justify these sorts of splits in terms of who gets paid what. And this is where the great opportunity lies. If a teacher does get their act together, in terms of having some business sense and being a bit more organized, and having organized student lists and communicating with their clients, encouraging people to come to class and finding new clients, they could charge quite a bit less than the studio was charging for in-person classes, for online classes, and then make a lot more money. For example, if you charge $5 per head for an online class, and you get 10 people in there, well, you've made $50 as a teacher, which is in the studio model from before. That is a well-established yoga teacher. There are lots of teachers who were teaching for like $20 or even less in yoga studios before.
Yeah, $20 a class is pretty crazy. I've fortunately never taught at a studio that pays that little, but I've definitely heard that before. And yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, I've seen teachers doing a lot of different things and charging a lot of different rates. And it's interesting because money is like a big topic within this industry. And you're totally right. You guys brought this up before, where it seems like a lot of teachers kind of struggle with the payment side of things and asking money for their services. And I've always thought about it as an exchange. So there's always going to be some sort of energetic exchange. And in, 2020 and the years previous to this as well, our exchange has been currency, which has been, the dollar of the place that you live in. And I hope that more teachers are kind of understanding that, because there's definitely value in what we offer as yoga teachers. In terms of the online yoga world, what do you guys kind of see as like pros and cons for yoga teachers?
Well, I think the pros is a bit like we were saying before, where the teachers can feel a lot more empowered about running their own business, about how much money, just simply how much money they'll make at the end of the month, and not having to travel, to go somewhere to teach a class, and just make the whole logistics a lot easier if when they get used to like the logistics of teaching online. The cons are you are running your own business. So you have to have a certain discipline and maybe get into a new routine of what it is you're doing, like in terms of reaching out to your students, getting them motivated to come to class, and keeping a clean student list, making sure you're telling people what's available, and also not being shy about getting paid.
Basically spending time doing non-teaching, which is a con. Most teachers just want to teach. That's why they're yoga teachers. And of course, then there are the cons of, maybe this is just our opinion, we really hope the world goes back to the way it was. We're already getting upset about the fact that everyone spends all day with their head buried in their phone and everyone's online all the time, and we're losing connections, where you can hug people and shake hands and be with people. So there are cons there. I guess it depends on the teacher and how important it is for them to be face-to-face with a student, maybe to touch them and adjust them and that kind of stuff. It certainly requires a different kind of teaching.
But I think you can also offer a sense of, you can't offer the adjustments and stuff that you would when you teach online, but there's some teachers that make sure that before the beginning of class or at the end of class, there's always some time for people to talk to each other, or maybe, everybody goes and grabs a drink or a cup of tea or whatever they want to drink. And then there's just like have a little bit of time to kind of socialize after class, and just give that time to the people that are joining the class on Zoom. So you get a little bit that sense of community. And it's not necessarily super obvious when you're teaching online, I think, to not just be like, hello, here's a class, okay, goodbye, but to just offer this little extra for people to just have the connection and the community that you used to have in a yoga class. I think it's up to the teacher, but it's just like, how do you want to teach? What do you offer to your students? And it
might be more challenging to build this feeling of community. Although, in in-person classes, you can also just go into a massive yoga factory walk-in class, observe the performer and try to emulate them and then walk back out, and there's no community there either. So it's kind of the same online or offline.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I've thought a lot about this as well. And I think that you guys brought up some really really relevant pros and cons. I think, being a business owner is definitely, I kind of consider all yoga teachers business owners, but I know for a lot of people, it's kind of like this reality that they're facing in a different way in order to be financially sustainable in order to pay their rent with this type of job. And for a lot of people, you're right. They just want to teach yoga. Yoga is what they're passionate about. They never got into it to be an entrepreneur, to work for themselves, to do marketing and that type of thing. And I definitely understand that. That's definitely the need I'm trying to meet with yoga teachers and studio owners in the industry. And it's interesting to think about the community piece. And I mentioned that we did some market research with some of our students. And something that I think almost everyone we talked to said is that they love being able to get on Zoom early and talk to their friends and see their friends. And then they love getting unmuted at the end of Zoom so that they can say goodbye. And they love when the teacher identifies them by name. And I thought that was so interesting because you're right. We're more connected than ever. Like we talked about at the beginning, it's our parents are on Zoom and, my grandpa learned how to use all this tech. He's in his 80s and he learned how to use all this tech through this because he had to. But at the same time, we're more disconnected than ever because staring at somebody through a screen or talking at somebody through a screen isn't really the same as sitting in person with them, having that maybe physical contact, getting to hug, shake hands, all those types of things. So it's definitely interesting to think about that.
Yeah, and the pros and cons, and do we like it or not, and do we miss, real physical interaction? And all these questions, they're interesting, but they're actually irrelevant because we have to accept that the world is changing all the time, and we have to accept the changes that are happening now and adapt to them and work with them. And I actually think it can be great for a lot of people to be forced to be a little bit entrepreneurial. I mean, we're entrepreneurs, obviously, and our whole thing is to celebrate micro entrepreneurs. That our whole mission with Ubindi is to empower independent teachers. And, we're all about yoga at the moment because of our experience with YogaTrail. And if you visit Ubindi, it kind of looks like it's about yoga, but actually our bigger plan is to help anyone who has skills or passions with the tools to do it. And so we're imagining, people teaching cooking classes and other kinds of fitness or dance or music or all sorts of things.
That's
be
awesome.
A great thing. I mean, change almost always is painful, but very often can be a great thing.
Right. I think people are forced now to, step out of their comfort zone massively and to kind of reinvent their business. But it can really be a great thing. I think it can really be a great thing for most people to just to do their own thing and to feel empowered and to have this independence that maybe they were thinking about before, when they were teaching yoga. And in the world before COVID, the yoga teachers who were teaching online were only super successful yoga teachers who'd have their video online or whatever, in a special website. But now everybody is doing it. And I'm sure many people were thinking about doing it before, but they wouldn't do it because this, because that, because maybe tomorrow I should, putting it off. And now they have to. And now they're doing something that maybe they've been thinking about doing for a long time. And now they've been pushed into it.
Yeah, 100%. I was working with a yoga teacher one-on-one kind of right around as everything built up with the pandemic, and something we had been talking about earlier in 2020 was she was like, this year I want to launch a YouTube channel. That's one of the things I want to do is be recording videos. And it just wasn't kind of the top priority for her. So it was one of those projects where it's I want to do it, but it's kind of a back burner project. And then March hit and she's like, I bought a microphone, I set up my recording space, and she's like, I just started recording videos and I started my YouTube channel that was previously identified as this back burner project. And she's like, it felt so good to just do it. And it actually wasn't as hard as she thought it was going to be. She'd made it out to be this big project in her head, and it actually wasn't.
Yeah, I think it's like that with anything. If you don't know, you make it much harder than it probably is going to be. And once you get started and you're in there, you're like, well, it's not that bad. I don't know why I didn't do that 2 years ago.
Yeah, 100%. And you guys also touched on something really important that I want to acknowledge. And it's we can talk about what things were like before, and we can kind of grieve for that. But accepting the fact that the world is changing and that the yoga industry is changing, I think is an important piece of this, and kind of figuring out where you fit into that as a yoga teacher is super important. And now it's time for a short break from the show to talk about our sponsor, OfferingTree. If you're interested in finding an all-in-one platform for online or in-person teaching, then you should definitely check out OfferingTree. OfferingTree set out to make creating your digital presence fun, easy, and affordable. With one click, you can build a website, run online or in-person live classes, sell pre-recorded classes, manage memberships and packages, and much more. Communicating with your students is seamless and easy with their automated email system and email marketing tools. Already have your own website? No problem, because OfferingTree can embed seamlessly into your existing website. They're always adding new features to their platform to make it even better. They just recently released the online store feature that lets you easily sell digital content like yoga videos, challenges, and courses right from your website. If you're looking for a single platform to take care of all of your online and in-person teaching needs, then visit offeringtree.com/MBOM. OfferingTree has been supporting MBOM for over a year now, and I not only love the product, but I also love the people. OfferingTree is providing special pricing for MBOM listeners, so be sure to visit offeringtree.com/MBOM. That's offeringtree.com/MBOM to receive the discount. All right, now back to the episode. I'm curious, and we've talked about this a little bit, but if there's some other things that you have to add, kind of like the biggest opportunities that you guys see in this like new online world for yoga teachers.
Well, I just brought up YouTube. YouTube is the most popular social network because in terms of people spending time on it, it's way bigger than Facebook or anything else. So there are big opportunities for teachers to, like your client or friend, make some videos and start getting people to basically follow you on YouTube, and you'll find out that these people may be on the other side of the country or on the other side of the world, and just basically become more of a global or national or global kind of a person who connects with lots and lots of people all over the world. It's a big opportunity. It's not just that teachers are forced to go online and try this stuff. It's the audience too. The audience too is certainly during lockdowns and stuff forced to go online, and so there's a big opportunity for
right, because before
anything, really.
Before teachers, if you think about two teachers that live in the same town, they're all competing for clients, people that live in that town. But now the world is your oyster. I mean, you can, how successful or how active you are into doing your own online marketing, you can reach people that live the other end of the world
pretty easily.
Teach them online.
And for teachers, for yoga teachers, often studios will offer them gigs and jobs where they teach hatha yoga, a lot of stretching, not too heavy on the spiritual stuff, and they have to kind of conform to that. As an independent micro entrepreneur with potentially a massive audience out there, a teacher can really niche down into their special, unique personality and yoga style, and make a go of that, and reach people somewhere who will be into it and who will take classes with you and will pay you for it, and be part of your
online community,
your base.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think there's huge opportunity here. And I think it's kind of, shifting our mindsets a little bit, because traditionally we've thought about, whether you're a teacher or you're a studio owner, you think about your target market or your ideal student being geographically located in the same space as you. But, sort of for the first time in this industry, we no longer have these geographical confines. So you can think about, I'm interested in reaching this person. Who are they? Where are they? And you've got this entire planet essentially to find your people, which I think is like pretty cool. I mean, it gives you a way bigger market to work from.
Yeah. I mean, you can, teach yoga to blind people with heavy metal music who want to spend most of their time in a handstand or something weird, and if possible, if you have to get those kinds of people into one room, you'd probably have to live in New York City or London or something. But online, anything is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And so with that in mind, I want to talk a little bit about Ubindi. Can you tell me a bit more about what the software does, what the platform does, and what it is that you guys have created for yoga teachers and, further niches down the road?
Yeah, it's admin tools. We want it to be basically everything a teacher needs to do their admin. So you can create your classes, have a schedule where people can go to register for your classes in advance. They can pay you optionally if you set it up, or mandatory. You can create passes and memberships.
Take donation payments.
You've been able to track people's credits and handle all the admin. If your classes are online, you've been able to track attendance because people click through a button to go to Zoom or Google Meet or whatever you're using.
Send a confirmation to the students who have registered, and then send them a reminder before class is about to start. So all the really annoying bits that teachers had to do before, sending Zoom links and
or
stuff like that.
Or the studio was doing before.
Yeah. And then having a simple but very streamlined and powerful student management system where they can make little tags to group their students in order to contact maybe people who just come only for Monday classes or who are only beginners, and just that kind of stuff.
Well, and then email them. So you can, let's say you have 100 students on Ubindi, you can group people by beginners, intermediate, advanced, or whatever, and then click a button and send them an email. It's not fancy newsletter software like MailChimp, but it's very functional subject line email, plain text that goes into their inbox and not into their spam folders. You can set up waivers. Right. In the US, a lot of insurance companies require that of teachers. Basically, the admin stuff that are not so fun. A lot of teachers now are using pen and paper or Excel or all kinds of things that they kludge together.
Just have a system, basically offer teachers a system that's simple, that's all in one place, and that's functional without being a huge pain to set up and get into.
Right. So the idea of our main mission when we got going with the design is to make it as simple and intuitive as is humanly possible, because yoga teachers, I don't mean this disparagingly, but they tend not to be super techie. They don't want rocket ship dashboards and graphs and charts and stuff like that. So we've made it, I think we've done a pretty good job of made it very simple and intuitive to use, works great on a phone. We imagined before COVID that people would be teaching somewhere in a studio or in a field or somewhere and just have their phone with them so they can take attendance and add new students or take notes on students and all this stuff on a phone. It works on tablets or computer. It's basically in the cloud, so there's no app to download or anything. It's just a website basically, but it feels like an app.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I think even I just met with a yoga teacher the other day. We had a consultation call and she's launching this challenge, and she was, telling me about her email plans and stuff. And she's like, "Do you think it's fine that I'm just emailing from my Gmail?" And I was like, "Well, I think you should be using an email software. It's going to look nicer. It's going to be way easier. You can schedule it better. It's, less likely to go to spam. Plus, if you're getting the numbers you want, Gmail is actually going to not allow you to do that on BCC because they have a pretty small limit with that." And her biggest pushback was "Oh, well, I just don't want another software program. It's just another thing to do." And I love the fact that you guys have thought about all these things that kind of trip teachers up, because sometimes for me, because I've been doing this for a while and because I feel like I am more business minded, it doesn't seem that difficult to do this stuff. But for a lot of these yoga teachers, it's I just want to focus on creating a great class. I don't want to stress about how my email looks or how it's going to go out. They just need it to go out. And so I love that you've been able to look at that and create something for teachers.
Yeah, it's exactly it. People are very afraid of being overwhelmed with new tools and having to learn them and all that. Yeah,
But
so
I
our
think
email,
we
for
all
example,
get
is
overwhelmed with new tools. I mean, if we're not careful,
100%.
we
Yeah.
like end up collecting a lot of new things that we don't really know how to do, and then we end up wasting a lot of time on because we're not experts on that thing. So keeping it very simple is really important, I think, for teachers who basically want to save time on the admin rather than spend more time learning complicated tools.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this, I mean, that's what motivated us. I've talked to at least 1,000 yoga teachers over the
Right.
last few years.
Yeah.
And a lot of teachers are spending, for every hour of teaching, they're spending an hour doing admin. And that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be that much.
Yeah, and it's, there's lots of stuff out there for studios, like MindBody software is the big one, Zen Planner, and all these other studio management software packages, which are very great and very powerful. So if you run a yoga studio, you definitely need that. But as a one-man show or one-woman show, it's way overkill and, of course, way
Not
too expensive.
affordable. Yeah.
So Ubindi is totally free. If people have 50 students or less, all the features, everything works. And then the $10 a month upgrade to get unlimited students and basically full power. We really do that because we have to be careful that people add lists that they're not really teachers at all. They're just using spam. So we have a threshold where we have to charge money. Our overall business model is to make a tiny little bit of money from a lot of teachers, and hopefully everyone wins that way.
Yeah. Amazing. That sounds awesome. And so if people are interested in checking out Ubindi, where can they go to find that?
Ubindi.com.
Ubindi.com.
UBINDI. That's sort of why we picked the name. We thought it would be difficult to misspell it.
Yeah. Does it have a meaning? I was wondering that.
No, not really.
No,
It doesn't. We just wanted something that was unique, that had, kind of a friendly flavor to it, maybe some kind of yoga-y flavor to it, but also, more practical considerations. That's a domain that you don't have to buy for $10,000 and that people are going to remember. And there's not lots of stuff out there that sounds just like that.
Yeah. No, I love it. Okay. Ubindi.com. I will make sure that's in the show notes. Alex and Alex, thank you so much for this conversation today. This has been amazing.
Thank you for having us. It was lovely.
Great to talk to you.
All right, friends, that concludes the episode with Alex K and Alex J from YogaTrail and Ubindi. Make sure you go and check out what they're up to at Ubindi. They have a really awesome platform and software that is just making administrative tasks a lot easier. And they are also offering listeners of the show an incredible discount off the Essential Plan. So you can get 25% off the Essential Plan using the code MBOM. So MBOM. And you can find that at ubindi.com. We also have an amazing bonus episode with Alex and Alex where we're diving into tips for those of you who have been resisting online or struggling with online a little bit, and just their top tips for how to be successful teaching online. So if that sounds up your alley, head on over to patreon.com/MBOM yoga and you get access to that episode as well as all the other episodes. And we have a lot of episodes. This has been going for about 4 months now. So we have about 15 episodes on there. So you get access to all of those for less than $1 per episode. It is a really, really good deal. So once again, that's patreon.com/MBOM. And before we wrap up this episode, I just wanted to let you all know about an upcoming free workshop that I'll be hosting. It's called How to Create More Revenue from Offerings Other Than Yoga Classes. And this is for yoga studio owners, yoga studio managers, or independent yoga entrepreneurs who want to make more money and reach more students in 2021. And we're going to be talking about how to create revenue in your yoga businesses and in your yoga studios outside of just offering yoga classes. So we all know that yoga classes are a fabulous way to make revenue. I want to tell you about other ways that you can make revenue in your business. The workshop is on Thursday, January 28th at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And and you can register over at crowdcast.io/e/more-revenue. If that is a handful and a half, which I understand, or maybe you are driving or something like that, you can also head on over to the show notes at mbomyoga.com and you can get the link for the workshop. I also want to give a shout out to the sponsor for this episode of the show, OfferingTree. Make sure you head on over to offeringtree.com/MBOM. Check them out, see what they're all about, see if it's a right fit for you. Of course, if you have any questions about anything we talked about today, OfferingTree, or anything else, please make sure you reach out, info@mbomyoga.com. I always love hearing from you guys. All right, thanks for listening, and I will see you next week. Namaste. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.